According to Ming Xiu's map, the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal was under a large iceberg close to the inner ring of the glacial mountain range. From the wooden hut for the trial, it was only 3 days away. Lan Si took Lu Mu Yen and the others rushing all the way. On the way, they constantly encountered demonic beasts, but they slayed them one by one. 4 days later, the group reached a deep and dense forest where no ice blue could be seen. The dense plants that grew in the forest were all red, and even the soil was a dark red here. As far as the eye could see, it was red through and through, as if an undulating sea of fire. The rustling sound from demonic beasts running could be heard from time to time, and it was occasionally accompanied by a few beast roars. The most important thing was that when they encountered demonic beasts nearby, they were no longer attacked, and those demonic beasts that ran towards the depths of the woods just directly ignored them. Lan Si, why do these demonic beasts give up attacking when they see us? Ji Xian asked with a solemn expression on his face as he watched a Tier 5 water crocodile dash past them quickly but not attack. Lan Si had a gentle smile on his handsome and refined face. They're naturally going for the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal. It seems that the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal's not far from forming. It's even causing such madness from the demonic beasts. As expected of a legendary spiritual item. Yun Ji sighed with mixed emotions. Let's quickly go too. Not only might we not even be able to drink any soup if we arrive late, but we may even encounter a group attack by demonic beasts. Lan Si waved his hand and led the group of people towards the depths of the woods quickly. The longer Lu Mu Yen walked, the more there was an indescribable sense of oppression. It not only came from this spooky red forest, but there was also a feeling of being enveloped by something. Mo Yen, have you noticed anything unusual? Lu Mu Yen asked Mo Yen on her shoulders as she walked. Mo Yan's cold eyes were also dyed with a layer of vigilance at this time. This forest has been locked onto by a Tier 7 demonic beast. We're bound to encounter the attack of a group of beasts not far ahead. Tier 7 demonic beast? Then haven't they already transformed? Lu Mu Yen was startled, but there wasn't too much shock. With a spiritual item like the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal being born, it'd be weird if there weren't any high-tier demonic beasts competing for it. A Tier 7 demonic beast was equivalent to the strength of a human sword sovereign. She wondered if there were any sword sovereign experts sent out within the 10 distinguished clans. There definitely would be quite a few sword monarchs. On her side, it seemed that only Ming Xiu was a sword sovereign, so when the chaotic battle begins, he might not even be able to protect her. It truly was perilous. Fortunately, there's only the aura of one Tier 7 demonic beast. If there were more demonic beast kings, let alone you guys competing for the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal, I'm afraid that you won't even return alive. Mo Yen withdrew his demonic sense and said lightly. Lu Mu Yan's lips curled up. How do you know that after the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal's fully formed, there will be no other transformation stage demonic beasts that appear? This time we're really pulling teeth on a tiger's mouth one, and whether we live or die is unknown. Although she said it was dangerous, but her eyes were dense with battle intent and determination. After she successfully established her foundation, she must begin to nurture her natal magic treasure, and the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal was something that would have even made her desire to obtain it in the spirit world. Now that she had such an opportunity, she naturally didn't want to miss it. Although there were many obstacles ahead, but it wasn't as if there weren't any chances. And even if she couldn't obtain the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal, she still had the skills to save her own life. Only those who took risks could obtain wealth. I see that you're not afraid of Tier 7 demonic beasts at all. Mo Yen glanced at Lu Mu Yen and said, what's there to be afraid? What should come will always eventually come. If you lose mentally, then why do you even speak of competing for the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal? Lu Mu Yen unconsciously revealed an inborn self-confidence and intimidating manner. She had never bowed her head down to fate. Mo Yen felt Lu Mu Yan's firm determination, and there was a touch of appreciation in his eyes. It was a wise decision to sign a contract with this woman. How could his master easily retreat because of the numerous obstacles and dangers ahead? The path of cultivation had always been to defy the heavens, and going forward courageously was the decisiveness that the strong should have. Of course, one couldn't act recklessly. If there were already 3 or 5 demonic beasts in the transformation stage ahead, then there wasn't any need to go and send themselves to their death in vain for a spiritual item. Everyone, those who have defensive magic tools, take it out and prepare for battle. Lan Si looked at the crowd not far ahead of them and made a hand gesture to the several people. They're already at war ahead of us. Mo Yan's voice also entered Lu Mu Yan's sea of consciousness at the same time. Lu Mu Yan's mental energy also probed the fierce battle ahead. She took out the golden long whip and held it in her hand, then mobilized a shield that her dad had given her before she left, in front of her, her eyes filled with interest. Roar! Boom! As soon as she approached the depths of the woods, the fighting in front of her grew more intense. The smile on Lan Si's face had subsided, and he instructed everyone, let's go have a look. Remember, your life is most important. Be careful. After speaking, he leapt in that direction. Lu Mu Yen and the others also followed him quickly. Around less than a quarter of an hour away, Lu Mu Yen and the others stopped by a rock. The dense red forest ahead had already been razed to the ground by the fight between the humans and demonic beasts. What entered the eyes was a colony of low-level fire ant colony, gushing out like a tide, besieging the elite pupils of the 10 distinguished clans. Lan Si, bring your people to help. We'll talk about other things after killing them, otherwise it'll only be a dead end for everyone. The middle-aged man who was acquainted with Lan Si and met in the Green Forest before resisted the siege of fire ants as he split his focus, yelling towards Lan Si. The elite pupils of the 10 distinguished clans were strong, but the fire ant colony came wave after wave. Now that Lan Si's people were here, whether it was for the heavenly frost golden crystal or not, they naturally had to pull them down the water together too, otherwise even if they succeed in breaking out of this siege, they wouldn't allow Lan Si and the others, who looked on doing nothing, to share a bowl of porridge 3. Lan Si also understood this principle, otherwise he wouldn't bring the students over in such a hurry. Alright. Well, withstand a wave for you, you guys go recover quickly. Lan Si yelled to the man, then turned to Lu Mu Yen and the others and said, go up and share some of their burden. Use your all, don't feel like you'll get lucky. This way, we'll be qualified to negotiate with them later. Yes. The several people answered in unison. Not to mention that it was for the heavenly frost golden crystal, just to save their own lives, they also had to go up. Let's go directly to the front and let them have a rest to catch their breaths. Yun Zmo, with furrowed brows, said to the group of people as he saw that the pupils of the 10 distinguished clans were currently very tired, and their elemental energy had been exhausted too much, almost to the point that they could hold on no longer. Yes. Right after Lu Mu Yen and the others replied, they leapt up and landed directly at the center of the battle, meeting the fire ant colony as they brandished their magic treasures. As soon as Lu Mu Yen and the others landed on the ground, they brandished the magic tools in their hands, attacking in a frenzy, temporarily blocking the siege of the fire ant colony in front of them. The elite pupils of the 10 distinguished clans immediately stepped back, taking turns to meditate and restore their elemental energy and physical strength. Those who had pills that replenished elemental energy would occasionally take one out to swallow reluctantly as if their flesh hurt from using one. Lan Si and the several instructors weren't idle either. They quickly joined the battle. While waving his long sword, he asked the middle-aged man, "Where are your sword monarch powerhouses?" Looking for the queen fire ant. As long as we kill it, we can get out of this trouble. Now we can only bide our time. The middle-aged man repelled a wave of fire ants and replied helplessly. Lan Si nodded and quickly moved beside the middle-aged man to share his burden. The others also took the opportunity to regain their elemental energy and rest for a while. Time passed bit by bit and the people on Lu Mu Yan's side were consuming elemental energy enormously. Even if they took turns to kill with the elite pupils of the 10 distinguished clans, it wouldn't be enough to survive the endless waves of the fire ant colony that surfaced from all directions. They simply couldn't bear this kind of human wave tactic, and many of the pupils' elemental energy were gradually being hollowed out. From time to time, there would also be blood-curdling screams of those that were dragged into the fire ant colony, then quickly drowned and gnawed away, leaving only a skeleton. Those that have pills, take it all out and eat. Saving them will only leave you a dead end. After taking an elemental energy-enhancing pill, the middle-aged man yelled towards the crowd. The elite pupils of the 10 distinguished clans watched their companions bury themselves among the fire ants and no longer felt pained about using pills. They took out their own to take, replenishing their elemental energy while continuing to battle. As for the people on Lu Mu Yan's side, the speed of the natural recovery of elemental energy also couldn't keep up with the speed of consuming it, so Yun Zmo took the lead and began to take out the pills on him to use. In comparison, Xiao Xiang's had the most elemental energy-enhancing pills, so he threw a pill each to Lu Mu Yan and the others. Because Lu Mu Yan had succeeded in establishing her foundation, the spiritual energy in her was even more abundant than an initial phase Sword King. However, such a high-intensity battle also consumed nearly half of her spiritual energy, so the moment she caught Xiao Xiang's pill, she sent it to her mouth. Then she immediately furrowed her brows. The effect of this pill was a bit too poor. To think it's a grade 2 pill, it was simply not at the same standard as the spiritual energy replenishing pill that she refined. The efficacy of one elemental energy enhancing pill could only replenish 1/5 of the elemental energy. This speed couldn't even keep up with the loss of elemental energy from fighting. Squeak. Suddenly, a piercing scream came from underground, and accompanying the sound were more fire ants that dug through the ground. Although the amount in each wave was less than before, but their levels were far higher than the previous groups of ants. Most of them were tier 3 or tier 4, and there were even occasionally tier 5 fire ants emerging. Elder brother. Due to the chaotic battle against the demonic beasts, Lu Mu Yan had no chance to greet Yi Qing Han and the others. Now she heard a familiar voice not far away. With a turn of her head, she saw that Yi Qing Lu was besieged by more than a dozen tier 4 fire ants, and her calf had been bitten by a tier 5 fire ant that was more than half a meter long, meanwhile Yi Qing Han was surrounded by more than 30 tier 4 fire ants and simply couldn't break free. But only after moving a little more than a meter, 3 tier 5 fire ants suddenly emerged from the red earth before him. Little sister. Yi Qing Han dealt with the 3 tier 5 fire ants while splitting his focus to pay attention to Yi Qing Le's situation. The other pupils and superiors of the Yi clan were all entangled with tier 4 and tier 5 fire ants that were constantly emerging from underground. They could barely protect themselves, so they simply had no energy to break free from the obstacles and save her. Seeing that the circle magic treasure in Yi Qing Le's hand was knocked down by another tier 5 demonic beast that appeared on her side, the surrounding fire ants quickly wanted to submerge and swallow her. Yi Qing Han yelled and tried to free himself using all he had to save her, but there were simply too many fire ants. Just as he killed one, there would be another 2 more to besiege him. His sword aura was constantly being brandished, but his pace simply wasn't fast enough. His body trembled slightly, his heart palpitated fiercely, and his eyes were bloodshot, staring at Yi Qing Lu being besieged by fire ants. Yi Qing Le's situation also attracted other people's attention. After all, she was the treasured daughter of the Yi clan's patriarch, and if something went wrong with her, no one could explain themselves. But because everyone was entangled by multiple fire ants, no one was able to rescue her and could only watch her, with her pale face, being pushed to the ground by a few Tier 4 fire ants. 2 Tier 5 fire ants swiftly stepped forward, ground the 2 ferocious fangs in their mouths, then one of them lowered its head, opened its mouth, and bit towards her head. Little sister. Yi Qinghan's voice was desperate. Ignoring the besieging fire ants, he wanted to quickly rush over, but he was still dragged back by a few Tier 5 fire ants, and was even bitten on his back a few times. Yi Qingle's face was pale and there was a touch of despair in her eyes. She didn't expect that she would be buried in the mouths of these fire ants today. She fixedly looked in Yi Qinghan's direction, her little face full of reluctance to go. Pa! Just when everyone thought that Yi Qinglu was going to be eaten by the 2 Tier 5 fire ants, a ghost-like white figure suddenly flashed a few times and landed in front of Yi Qinglu. A beam of golden light flickered and the Tier 5 fire ant that was about to bite down on Yi Qingle's head was whipped more than 3 meters away. Such a breathtaking scene made everyone feel slightly relieved. Only after the white figure landed were they surprised to discover that it was actually Lu Muyen. Elder sister Muyen. Yi Qinglu was already prepared to die, but she didn't expect that Lu Muyen would arrive to save her. A layer of mist rose in her eyes as if she had found a backbone. Lu Muyen hurriedly approached Yi Qinglu and pulled her back more than 10 steps away to avoid the attack of the other Tier 5 fire ant behind her. She furrowed her arched brows and looked at the many bite wounds on Yi Qingle's leg where blood flowed incessantly. Yes, elder sister Muyen, be careful. Yi Qinglu sniffed and forcefully held back the tears in her eyes. She couldn't let Lu Muyen be distracted. Seeing Lu Muyen suddenly come to save his younger sister like a female celestial, Yi Qinghan's heart that was in despair gradually came back to life. Snap! Snap! The Tier 5 fire ant that was whipped away was completely angered now. A human woman with a cultivation base 1 tier lower than itself actually dared to treat it in such a way. It was unforgivable. It ground its fangs as it leapt towards Lu Muyen rapidly. Seeing that it was robbed of its food, the Tier 5 fire ant that was about to bite Yi Qinglu from behind also became angry. Lu Muyen's eyes grew cold, took out a white porcelain bottle and stuffed it in Yi Qingle's hands. Quickly, take it all to restore your elemental energy. Then she waved the golden long whip and greeted the dozen or so fire ants that had come up to encircle her. Her black eyes that were originally as bright as the stars now had a sliver of unbridled battle-intent surface in them, mixed with endless icy coldness. Pa! Pa! The others watched as the whip in Lu Muyen's hands were as if it had come to life, whipping away each fire ant that approached her and Yi Qinglu one by one. What was even more shocking and unexpected was that, as if it had grown eyes of its own, each whip would directly pierce through a Tier 4 fire ant's head, wrap around the crystal core, and pull it right out. In just a moment, the bodies of Tier 4 fire ants piled up all around her. The 2 Tier 5 fire ants already bore elementary intelligence, so seeing that she was so bold and powerful, they immediately stopped in their steps and made a few high, shrill cries towards the sky. Then all one saw were the many fire ants that besieged the others, turn and quickly crawl in Lu Muyen's direction. Countless low-level fire ants also surfaced out of the ground to surround Lu Muyen and Yi Qinglu, narrowing the attack range bit by bit. Yener. Muyen. Several anxious and panicked voices of men sounded around, but because of the influx of fire ants that encircled Lu Muyen and Yi Qinglu, even if the others wanted to turn around and help, it would be difficult to break though for a while. At this time, there was only one thought in everyone's mind: Lu Muyen was done for. With Lu Muyen besieged, Lu Mubai, Yunlan and the others were all extremely anxious. They quickly slayed the surrounding fire ants and wanted to step forward to rescue her, but there were simply too many ants and too few people. Yi Qinghan split the 2 Tier 5 fire ants before him into halves and ran towards the group of fire ants. Lu Muyen waved her golden long whip continuously, and occasionally leapt up and used her powerful body to physically face off against 2 Tier 5 fire ants who wanted to sneak attack her. The 2 Tier 5 fire ants, with extremely tough bodies that shone with a cold, red glow all over, when colliding with Lu Muyen, were repelled back, and their eyes revealed some confusion. Yi Qinglu ate all the pills that Lu Muyen had given her. As soon as the pills were taken, it turned into boundless elemental energy that spread throughout her meridians and her dry dantian was quickly replenished. Her eyes lit up and the moment her elemental energy was replenished, she beckoned with her hands to the magic treasure rings on the ground. The 2 rings immediately lit up brightly and turned into 2 streams of light, flying into her hands. The wound on her leg also stopped bleeding thanks to Lu Muyen's medicinal powder. Even the torn opening was slowly healing. She threw her 2 rings, approached Lu Muyen, and fought with her back-to-back to deal with the besieging group of fire ants. Elder sister Muyen, what do we do? Yi Qinglu watched as the fire ants attacked them in groups. Her despair remained, but she still looked towards Lu Muyen with trust in her eyes. Lu Muyen wielded the golden long whip, and practically dealt fatal blows with each strike as fire ants fell in front of her one by one. A murderous aura that had never been revealed before rose on her. She took out another bottle of spiritual energy replenishing pills and stuffed it to Yi Qinglu, reassuring, fight. The moment your elemental energy is exhausted, immediately replenish it. You must protect yourself well. Yes. Yi Qinglu took the white porcelain bottle that still carried Lu Muyen's body temperature. Seeing that at the same time as brandishing her long whip, she still unconsciously protected her from harm, a warm current rose in her heart. Aside from her elder brother, Lu Muyen was the first person to protect her with her life. Lu Muyen controlled the shield in front of her and separated it into 4 afterimages, enclosing Yi Qinglu within. Then she narrowed her eyes and her lips rose in a daring arc. She tapped her foot lightly and flew straight into the group of fire ants. Did Lu Mu Yan go crazy? Not far away, those that slayed the fire ants while also focusing on Lu Mu Yan's battle saw her rush into the group of fire ants as if she were seeking death and couldn't help but let out a sound of surprise. Yener. Lu Mu Bei's expression changed drastically. Although he knew that his younger sister wouldn't do impulsive things if she didn't have any certainty, but he still couldn't help but feel his heart rise and hover in his chest. He headed towards Lu Mu Yan as he killed Mu Yan. Yun Lan, Qi Yi Xian and the others were also taken aback by her actions. Such behavior was undoubtedly suicide. What was wrong with her? Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth, suppressed the shock and worry in his heart, then madly killed the fire ants to break though and join Lu Mu Yan. Lan Si, who had been able to temporarily free himself, couldn't help but reveal a worried look and headed quickly in Lu Mu Yan's direction. He couldn't let her fall here. Not far away, Lu Xiang, who was dealing with more than a dozen tier 3 fire ants, revealed a gloating smile in her eyes. Lu Mu Yan, this trash, was really stupid. She actually put herself in such danger for Yi Qinglu, and now she acted even more stupidly, rushing into the group of fire ants to seek death. Xueling and Xianing Xian also had the same thoughts as her. They all wished that Lu Mu Yan would just be torn apart and swallowed by the fire ant colony. When everyone all thought that Lu Mu Yan wouldn't live long, suddenly, a white shadow quickly shuttled through the crevices between the fire ant colony. Her golden long whip was fast, accurate and ruthless, piercing the weakest part of the fire ant's head where the demonic crystal was, either shattering the demonic crystal or pulling it out. What stunned everyone even more was the fact that she frantically waved the long whip in one hand while holding a white porcelain bottle in the other, constantly pouring pills into her mouth. The fragrance of pills overflowed, and the people surrounding her who smelled the serene scent within the pills were shocked. This was definitely a high-level pill that was even more effective than the elemental energy-enhancing pill. How did she have so many? Lunatic, Lu Mu Yan. This woman's a lunatic. The elite pupils of the 10 distinguished clans couldn't help but sigh with mixed emotions as they watched Lu Mu Yan's desperate killing of the high-level fire ants at close range. Even when her body clashed against the hard shell of the fire ant, she was not at all inferior. In fact, her bodice toughness was even stronger. What left them most speechless was that after this woman finished a bottle of pills, she would immediately take out another bottle, and then crazily pour it into her mouth as if she didn't want money won. Occasionally, she even freed some time to toss white porcelain bottles after white porcelain bottles of pills towards Lu Mu Bai and the others who were heading over to help her, and even shouted words that made their flesh hurt, "Eat as much as you want, I promise there'll be enough." Was this meat? She even said to eat as much as they want and that shall have enough. Xiao Ziong caught a bottle of pills and quickly poured one into his mouth. It melted instantly, and his mouth was full of the refreshing medicinal fragrance. His elemental energy was also quickly replenished. He didn't expect Lu Mu Yan's pill to actually be more than 5 times as effective as the elemental energy enhancing pill. Just what kind of pill was this? It was truly amazing. Wait, that's not right. Lu Mu Yan, this prodigal woman, was truly crazy. How could she waste such a pill like this? Lu Mu Yan, you lunatic woman, don't be so prodigal. Save a bit, save a bit. Xiao Ziong put the bottle away and shouted to Lu Mu Yan. As an alchemist, he firmly could not tolerate such prodigal behavior. Lu Mu Yan, this woman was just a complete prodigal lady. She might not feel distressed, but he felt distressed for her. Lu Mu Yan poured a few pills into her mouth, then when she heard Xiao Ziong shout, the corner of her lips couldn't help but twitch. Just look at what's happening right now, and he still wants to fuss about this? She lacked everything, but she just didn't lack this sort of low-level pill. Before coming to the glacial mountain range, she had already thought of numerous hazards, bought a bunch of spiritual herbs, and refined nearly 100 bottles of spiritual energy replenishing pills for emergency. Idiot. Hearing Xiao Ziong still yelling, Lu Mu Yan glanced at him disdainfully and cast a look that made him shut up. Xiao Ziong felt that he was going crazy. Lu Mu Yan, that prodigal lady, just what sort of look was that? Was this how one squandered? Those were pills. Not candy. Lu Mu Yan would naturally ignore Xiao Ziong's lamenting look. As soon as her spiritual energy was exhausted, the pills would immediately follow to replenish it. The golden long whip in her hand didn't stop for a moment, and whip by whip, it stabbed towards the fire ants around her. All everyone saw was a woman in white with an elegant figure, nimbly waving her long whip that shimmered with golden light. Her figure, like a ghost, wandered, unbridled, through the fire ant colony. Wherever she went, there would definitely be a fire ant with a bloody hole on its head where its demonic crystal had been lost. The thing that drove them completely nuts was that every few moments she would take out a bottle of pills that even made them be unable to restrain their desire for it and pour them into her mouth as if she didn't want money. How wild and arrogant her attitude was, and yet she gave people a feeling that this was how she was meant to be. But many people were still bleeding in their hearts. Lu Mu Yan, could you not be so luxurious? Many people had the urge to go up and snatch the porcelain bottle from her hand to stop her prodigal behavior. This woman wasn't only a complete battle lunatic, but also a complete prodigal lady. This was the deepest impression that Lu Mu Yan left on the elite pupils of the 10 distinguished clans during this battle. Lu Mu Yan's fierceness and madness not only stunned the surrounding sword masters but also completely angered the besieging fire ant colony. Watching this petite human female pierce and kill their companions to the ground one by one, under the shrill command of a few tier 5 fire ants, all the fire ants that were besieging the others turned around. With little crimson eyes, they also crawled in her direction with madness. Standing on Lu Mu Yan's shoulder, Mo Yan was always ready to release the pressure of a king-class demonic beast, using his innate talent to suppress them. But he didn't want to expose it in front of all these people unless it was the last resort, otherwise it'd be detrimental to Lu Mu Yan. What are you all doing looking stunned? Yi Qinghan finally broke through to Lu Muyan's side and stood side by side with her in a protective stance. Looking at the fire ants attacking frantically, he furrowed his brows and ordered the Yi clan pupils, all Yi clan pupils are to immediately kill these fire ants. Offenders shall be dealt with according to the clan disciplines. Obeying the young lord's command. The Yi clan's people who were dumbfounded by Lu Muyan's behavior heard Yi Qinghan's roar and came back to their senses. They took up their magic treasures and leapt towards the periphery of the battle ring to slaughter the fire ants. The fire ants had only one target right now, and that was the female in white who was maneuvering around within the battle ring, so they completely ignored the humans who came up to attack from behind. Following the shrill of the tier 5 fire ants, the fire ants rushed forward desperately as if they didn't want their lives, just wanting to tear Lu Muyan into pieces. Lu Mubai and his party broke through close to Lu Muyan's location around the same time as Yi Qinghan arriving beside her. But right now, the other fire ants didn't care about them and only wanted to maniacally bite Lu Muyan to death. Meanwhile they also freed themselves and surrounded Lu Muyan to kill the swarm of fire ants. When the Ling clan saw this, their expressions also changed. Ling Fei Hao and Ling Fei Li directed their clan's pupils to join the battle ring to help. Shi Feng's gaze kept falling on the porcelain bottle in Lu Muyan's hand. Seeing that the fire ant colony had gone crazy, he made a hand gesture to the Shi clan's people, tapped his toes, and flew into the battle ring. Shi clan's pupils, come and support quickly. Yes, young lord. Not far away, Mui looked at the battle ahead with an indistinct expression. After thinking deeply for a bit, he spit out one word to the pupils of his clan, kill. After saying this, he flashed into the battle ring, then numerous sword auras scattered from him, falling right into the fire ant colony one after the other. The people from the several other clans didn't hesitate either upon seeing 3 distinguished clans had already acted. Lu Muyan also helped them by attracting the fire ant colony, so it was only natural to go help them at this time. Lu Muyan exploded with the strength of a sword king with only the cultivation base of a sword spirit, which impressed many elite pupils. Her prodigal behavior of taking pills also made them wring their wrists in pity but also excitement. As a result, many people had their minds focused on befriending her. After all, for being able to take out so many high-level pills that replenish elemental energy, the alchemist behind her definitely wasn't low in grade. Many pupils of the Xian clan and Shui clan were also a little excited when they saw that the others had joined the battle to help, but the 2 young ladies who were in charge were both silent. They could only you look at me and me look at you, unsure of whether they should or shouldn't help out. Shui Ling, you're not going to help. Xian Xian folded her arms, and her expression was terribly grim. Seeing Yi Qinghan desperately guarding that bitch beside her, she just wanted to go and tear her up. Shui Ling sneered, naturally, well, go. Could they not go up in this situation? It wasn't like she was a fool. Having always been admired by countless outstanding men, for the first time, she felt that the elegant and extremely beautiful woman within the battle ring was an extreme eyesore. At this time, that woman was like an exceedingly brilliant gem, suppressing her, a woman favored by the heavens. Insidiousness flashed past her heart. Go, but don't do your best. Just put on an act and save our combat power first. Shui Ling's scheming was far deeper than Xian Xian's. On the surface, she wouldn't display any hostility to Lu Muyan, so based on the current situation, she had to put on an act and join the battle ring. The pupils of the Shui clan also knew that their young miss had a beautiful and kind face but did things very insidiously, a classic snakes and scorpions beauty one. Although they didn't agree with her orders inwardly, but they didn't dare disobey, so they all followed her into the battle ring to help while not using all their energy. Young miss, everyone else all went to help, it's not good to just stand here like this, is it? An elder beside Xian Xian couldn't help but furrow his brows and say. He knew that Xian Xian was highly arrogant and loved the young lord of the Yi clan so deeply that she couldn't help herself, but how could she be controlled by her emotions at this time? If the people from the other clans and Yanzhou kingdom resolved the fire ants and only the Xian clan watched on the sidelines, then ITLL inevitably aroused disgust against them. Xian Xian wasn't an idiot either. She concealed the killing intent in her eyes and nodded to everyone in the Xian clan, go, just act it out like the Shui clan. Yes. Hearing that Xian Xian hadn't lost her reason because of Yi Qinghan's situation yet, the rest all felt a sense of relief. From their perspective, Yi Qinghan's actions to protect Lu Muyan was only normal. After all, Lu Muyan was trapped in the battle ring by the fire ants because she went to save his younger sister. But no one dared say anything in fear of angering their temperamental eldest young miss. The targeted attacks of the fire ant colony saved the other people a lot of trouble. They only needed to kill them one by one from the back, and they rarely encountered any counterattacks. When their elemental energy was almost exhausted, they would take turns to replenish and rest. After all, they weren't as prodigal as Lu Muyan, and they didn't have that many pills on them to squander either. This was precisely the disparity between them. Mo Yen, can you detect whether the sword monarch powerhouses of the 10 distinguished clans have found the queen fire ant or not? Lu Muyan dealt with the fire ant colony that had gone completely insane as she asked Mo Yen telepathically. To continue like this simply wasn't a good idea. The amount of fire ants in the colony was simply enormous. Even if there wasn't a shortage of spiritual energy replenishing pills in her interspatial ring, but if this sort of exhaustive battle didn't end soon, even she wouldn't be able to support herself for long, not to mention those that didn't have that many pills. Mo Yen looked deeply into the distance, released a part of his demonic sense, then replied after a while, hold on for another quarter of an hour, the battle over there will be over soon. Lu Muyan pressed her lips together, then took out a few bottles of pills and threw them to Yi Qinghan and the others one by one. As soon as you exhaust your elemental energy, take it. Don't save it, the battle should be over in another quarter of an hour at most. Yi Qinghan and the several people took the pill bottles. Although they were surprised by how she judged that the battle was about to end, but they had an inexplicable sense of trust towards her. She told them not to save it, so they weren't quarrelsome either. They poured the pills in their hands into their mouths one after the other, copying Lu Muyen. A stream of pure and vast elemental energy instantly replenished their dantian. The sword ore as they waved was even stronger and powerful as well. The behaviors of the several people also attracted the attention of the other elite pupils and they all displayed envious looks towards them. It turns out that behaving like a prodigal is so refreshing, no wonder Lu Muyan so fond of this path. Yun Jin poured a bottle of spiritual energy replenishing pills into his mouth and felt the elemental energy in his body completely fill in a short amount of time. He couldn't help but sigh with complex feelings. Xiao Ziong looked at the several people, who all copied Lu Muyen in squandering, as if his flesh hurt. He couldn't resist holding his forehead. Finally, he gritted his teeth and poured the entire bottle of pills into his mouth. His eyes lit up immediately as continuous streams of elemental energy replenished his dantian, and he instantly felt that he had the explosive power to fight again. Seeing the envious, jealous, and hateful gazes cast on them from many of the surrounding people, he swallowed his saliva, but the excitement in his heart was simply beyond words. As it turned out, this sort of luxurious squandering really was refreshing. Close to a quarter of an hour later, with Lu Yen as the center, the corpses of the fire ants piled up into small hills. The elemental energy of many people were almost all exhausted, but their surrounding area was still densely packed with crimson ants, like tides. Lu Muyen kept maneuvering through the fire ant colony with calm eyes, thinking that it should be around time. Sure enough, a harsh, piercing cry suddenly reverberated in the air, carrying the whine and pressure of an advanced phase Tier 6 demonic beast, which was many times stronger than the Tier 5 demonic beast's cry from before. Screech screech. The surrounding fire ants heard the high-pitched voice filled with despair and immediately stopped attacking Lu Muyen. Their sharp fangs ground together and created a sound that made one's hair stand on end. The leading Tier 5 fire ant's eyes grew bloodshot and in order to respond, also raised its head and shrieked a few times. Afterwards, the high-level fire ants quickly lowered their heads and burrowed into the red soil one by one while the low-level fire ants also scattered and followed without hesitation. Their queen had let out a desolate scream, and the cry for help grew louder and louder each time. All the fire ants were anxious and wanted to rush to the queen's nest, so they ignored Lu Muyen and the rest completely. The colony of ants came quickly and left quickly as well. In only a few breaths, they had all burrowed into the ground and disappeared. Some pupils who had no idea what was happening were still brandishing their swords as they watched their opponents disappear, dumbfounded. What's going on? Why did they all run away? The elders have successfully found the queen fire ant who controls the fire ant colony. They're going back to rescue it. The originally ugly expression of the middle-aged man who was acquainted with Lan Si grew slightly better. They finally withstood it. Hearing his words, many people couldn't help but feel relieved. They slumped to the ground and panted, resting. Although they were all elite pupils of the 10 distinguished clans and had encountered many dangers during their trial, but this was the first time they've experienced something like what happened today. Pupils of the 10 distinguished clans, do a quick headcount and report to me a list of the deaths. The middle-aged man's eyes swept over the corpses that had been chewed on until only bone was left and sighed. After his words fell, many people revealed looks of lingering fear in their eyes. At this time, Lu Muyen was also sitting on the ground, pouring a bottle of pills into her mouth, quickly recovering her elemental energy, allowing herself to maintain her peak state at all times. Seeing that the battle was over yet she was still pouring pills into her mouth as if she didn't want money, Xiao Ziong couldn't help but twitch the corner of his lips, saying, Lu Muyen, the battle's already over, why are you still eating pills? Can you not be so prodigal? Lu Muyen looked askance at him with a rare trace of fatigue in her voice, naturally to be prepared for a battle at any time. After entering here, there definitely would be countless dangers awaiting them. Although that Tier 6 Queen Fire Ant was killed by the Sword Monarch elders of the 10 distinguished clans, but the oppressive aura of a Tier 7 transformation stage demonic beast had still not yet disappeared. No matter when, she couldn't let her guard down. Those fire ants won't come back again, will they? Xiao Ziong gasped. If that situation happened again, he really had no energy to fight anymore. Even if he kept replenishing his elemental energy, his physical strength could no longer keep up. He'd definitely die of exhaustion. Lu Muyen furrowed her brows and said speechlessly, are there no other demonic beasts besides the fire ants here? Can you not ask such idiotic questions in the future? Xian Ziong smacked his lips, leaned in beside Lu Muyen and said with a smile, how many more pills do you still have on you? How about taking out a few more pills and let us replenish our elemental energy too? Although he was a grade 1 alchemist, but his pill rate was too low. There were at most only 1 or 2 pills in each batch, and he couldn't even guarantee that he wouldn't waste a batch either. The grade 2 elemental energy enhancing pill they took earlier were all bestowed by the clan. He couldn't possibly refine it himself, let alone be as luxurious as Lu Muyen. Lu Muyen had always been generous to the people she acknowledged. She casually took out more than a dozen bottles of spiritual energy replenishing pills and threw them to Xiao Ziong and the others, as well as a few bottles to the Ling clan and Yi clan. Xiao Ziong opened the lid of the bottle and counted them. There were 5 pills altogether. His eyelids twitched uncontrollably. Why was it that the pills that were exceptionally precious in their hands were so worthless in her hands? Comparing oneself to another could definitely infuriate oneself to death. He carefully poured one out and put it in his mouth, then meditated to recover elemental energy, not acting so prodigal like he did during the battle earlier. The conversation and actions of the two naturally attracted the attention of the others. They couldn't help but hold their forehead at Lu Muyen's behavior of casually tossing out pills. Did this woman actually know the value of pills? Could she not be this prodigal? Standing not far away, Shifeng kept staring at the white porcelain bottle in Lu Muyan's hand. His eyes grew darker, and amidst the voices of jealousy and envy of the other clan's pupils, he walked in front of her and said bluntly without any expression, "Lu Muyan, can you show me the pills in your hand?" When he was fighting earlier, he smelt the pill fragrance and felt that it was extraordinary. Not to mention he hadn't seen this sort of pill that replenished elemental energy so quickly, unless they were grade 3 or grade 4 pills. But when he accidentally saw the quality of the pill, it seemed to appear a lot like a grade 2 pill, so he couldn't stop the desire for exploration in his heart and walked up to ask. Lu Muyan remembered that in addition to the Yi clan and the Ling clan earlier, Shifeng was the first to lead the pupils of his clan forward to help in the battle, and didn't handle it like the Shui clan and the Xian clan, so she nodded with a smile, took out a bottle of pills and handed it over. "I'll gift it to you." Xiao Ziong looked at Lu Muyan speechlessly. This prodigal lady, could she not be this generous? Shifeng also revealed slight surprise on his face, but apart from his enthusiasm for pills, he didn't like to ask until the roots of things regarding anything else. So he nodded, thanked her, took the pill, and walked right back to his original place. He opened the lid of the bottle and poured out a rotund and smooth white pill, pinched it between two fingers and sniffed it. His brows were tightly knitted, then he put it in his mouth. Immediately, his eyes that usually didn't display much emotion revealed an indescribable shock. Looking at his expression, everyone knew that this pill was extraordinary, and they all cast their gazes to Lu Muyan. "Young lord, eldest lord Shi could even obtain a bottle. We also went up to help fight just now, how about you also try?" A young man beside Mu Yi squinted and urged. Mu Yi chuckled, and a meaningful arc rose on his handsome face. "Sure." After saying that, he walked straight to Lu Muyan. Lu Muyan raised her head and looked at Mu Yi, who walked over. She also knew what he wanted to do, so she directly took out a bottle of spiritual energy replenishing pills and handed it to him. "I'll also gift you guys a bottle too." Mu Yi took the white porcelain bottle with a thoughtful look, and said with a smile, "Lu Muyan, you're very interesting, thanks." Lu Muyan was too lazy to guess what he meant by interesting. But when she glanced at the surroundings to check for any unusual activities, she discovered that the decision-makers of the various distinguished clans were all waiting to act. She took out 6 more bottles and stuffed it to Xiao Ziong, saying, "Go give these 6 bottles of pills to the other clans aside from the Shui clan and Xian clan." "Have you gone crazy?" Xiao Ziong hugged the porcelain bottle like a hen guarding her chicks, his eyes opened wide. Lu Muyan looked askance at his stupid appearance, displeased, and said in an impatient voice, "Don't be so short-sighted. With just this bit of pills and you can't find north, south, east, west anymore? Go quickly." Xiao Xiong feared that she would scheme against him, so he stood up and reluctantly went to deliver the pills. Except, when he just finished the delivery and sat back down in his original position, he heard an angry voice sound. "Lu Muyan, are you looking down on our Xian clan?" As soon as Xian Xian's words fell, everyone's gazes fell on Lu Muyan. Lu Muyan raised her head, her eyes as indifferent as before, and her voice was cold. Young Miss Xian must have mythomania. Starting from Shifeng asking for pills, she had already decided on gifting pills. With how she took out so many spiritual energy replenishing pills earlier to use, she naturally attracted the attention of the people in the 10 distinguished clans. Instead of hiding it and tucking it away, it was better to gift them out generously. Aside from the Shui clan and Xian clan, the pupils in the other clans bore no hostility towards her, not to mention any grudges. On one hand she bought people's hearts and on the other hand, it was a kind of intimidation. Except for people close to her, everyone else all thought that her pills came from that mysterious master. Being able to produce so many grade 2 spiritual energy replenishing pills was also a way to tell everyone that the master no one had seen before pampered her very much. Those who wanted to target her and the Lu clan should weigh their consequences first. She wasn't afraid of provoking anyone, but if she could use a tiger's skin to be her banner one, then she naturally wouldn't be so stupid as to tell everyone that the pills were refined by herself and that there simply wasn't any mysterious master behind her. Xian Xian was choked by Lu Muyan's words, especially when she saw Yi Qinghan cast a cold and displeased look at her. Her entire chest felt ablaze with anger, and jealousy almost made her lose all reason and go up to tear Lu Muyan apart. "If you don't look down on the Xian clan, then why did you gift pills to the 10 distinguished clans, all but the Xian clan and Shui clan?" Xian Xian was able to get along so well in the Xian clan like fish in water not only because of her father. She was wild and arrogant but wasn't completely brainless. After thinking a little, she suppressed the anger in her chest and pulled the Shui clan down the water together. After hearing Xian Xian's words, both the Xian clan and the Shui clan's pupils revealed indignant expressions. By doing this, Lu Muyan was literally slapping the faces of their 2 clans. "That's right. I also want to know why young Miss Lu would treat our 2 clans so discriminatorily." Shui Ling's beautiful and exquisite face revealed a touch of befuddlement, but she sneered inwardly that Lu Muyan was an idiot. If it were her, even if she disliked someone very much, she still wouldn't do such a thing such as blatantly offending 2 clans. Mu Yi stopped the steps he was taking to leave, then took a step back with great interest, wanting to see how Lu Muyan would deal with it. Lu Muyan's eyes were still indifferent, and her tone was faint. "Am I familiar with the Xian clan and Shui clan? Why must I gift you guys pills?" Seeing the indignant gazes of the pupils of the 2 clans, she sneered and said, "Just how much effort your 2 clans put in during the battle earlier is clear to everyone, so why must you openly discuss it and find unhappiness in it for yourselves? Young Miss Lu, you must have spoken incorrectly." Shui Ling brushed away the dust on her sleeves and said coldly, "The group of fire ants besieged you, but we kindly went up to help you. Regardless of how much effort we put in, it's still a show of our goodwill. Who would have thought that it was our fault now, and even made you hate us? Young Miss Shui really is a master of inverting black and white. I am ashamed that I am inferior." Lu Muyan raised an eyebrow and looked at Shui Ling, the coldness in her eyes not concealed at all, was that group of fire ants besieging me at first. From the very beginning, we, from Yanzhou Kingdom, were the first to help and rescue you guys from the siege. It shouldn't even be your turn if we're discussing goodwill, right? Furthermore, the pills are my own. I'll give it to whoever I like. I just simply think that you're not pleasing to the eye, so I don't want to gift it, so where comes the favoring someone and discriminating against another? The situation of Xue Ling annulling the engagement between her and Ling Fei Yang was known by all. She just simply considered this woman not pleasing to her eyes, and she was even less afraid to speak it out loud and offend this extremely hypocritical woman. Lu Muyen, are you trying to tear apart all pretenses with the Xian and Xue clan? Xian Xian saw how clever Lu Muyen was with her words, and how Xue Ling's skills with her mouth simply wasn't her opponent, so she didn't want to go in circles anymore, directly bringing out the Xian and Xue clan. She just didn't believe that this woman wouldn't have any fear against them. Seeing that Xian Xian took the initiative to take on the conversation again, Xue Lin swallowed what she wanted to say, but the killing intent in her eyes kept circulating. Lu Muyen chuckled, and there weren't any ripples in her eyes as she spoke gently, completely indifferent. You say tear apart all pretenses, then let's tear apart all pretenses. You think I'll be afraid? You're seeking death. Xian Xian didn't expect that Lu Muyen would openly challenge the Xian and Xue clan, and a flush of red appeared on her face, obviously angered. Meanwhile Lu Muyen just sat there indifferently and calmly, without a trace of fear or hesitation on her face. Even while facing Xian Xian's use of the two distinguished clans to oppress her, her expression still didn't change. That natural, nonchalant attitude was as if she were simply discussing about the weather today with Xian Xian, and it sure made many people look at her with new eyes and increased respect. But there were also a small number of people that disagreed with her lofty stance. Although Xian Xian provoked first, but Lu Muyen publicly not giving Xue Ling and Xian Xian any face was equivalent to slapping the two clans' faces. Such behavior was a bit too insolent. Seeking death? Young Miss Xian wants to raise your hand at me now? I know I offended you in Glacial City, so just take it directly out on me. Why make a fuss about pills? I'll just accept your challenge. Lu Muyen said with slight dominance and boldness, and her eyes even revealed a look of come get me. She had already offended this narrow-hearted woman when she and Xian Xian were competing for that stone in Glacial City. Not to mention the fact that Yi Qing Han's attitude towards her also made Xian Xian constantly reveal a sliver of killing intent towards her as well. The disagreement between the Xian clan and the Ling clan was already known by all. The Ling clan was her maternal clan, so they were destined to hold grudges with the Xian clan. So why did she have to pretend to be a steamed bun too and endure it? And towards the Xue clan and Xue Ling, she wasn't bothered with the superficiality of it all even more. The Xue clan and the Ling clan were already like fire and water, and all they were lacking was actually fighting. How could she enhance other people's spirit and diminish her prestige? So if she lowered her head to the Xue clan, it was the same as slapping Ling clan's face. After hearing Lu Muyen's words, many people revealed expressions of understanding. No wonder Xian Xian had always been hostile to Lu Muyen. It turned out that it wasn't only because of Yi Qing Han. If the two had already held grudges against each other, then with Xian Xian's temperament, it would be difficult for her to let Lu Muyen go. Meanwhile everyone knew why Lu Muyen's attitude towards the Xue clan wasn't good. In fact, if she deliberately bowed her head and catered to the Xue clan, then that would make people feel contempt towards her. Although the act of not giving any face was a little arrogant, but it could be regarded as filling the Ling clan's face. Lu Muyen, are you certain you want to go against me? Xian Xian asked fiercely as the rage within her was reaching the brink, only wanting to vent it out using force. As long as Lu Muyen dared to say yes, she would immediately handicap her. Xian Xian, so what if I go against you? Our Ling clan aren't vegetarians for. Ling Fei Hao snapped the branch in his hand and looked at Xian Xian as he said coldly. Yi Qinglu also walked to Lu Muyen's side, staring coldly at Xian Xian and Xue Ling, revealing a rare grim expression, and said, Elder Sister Muyen was besieged by fire ants to save me. If you have any complaints, you can direct it to me and our Yi clan will accompany you at any time. Since the two women opposite used the Xue clan and Xian clan to pressure Lu Muyen, Yi Qinglu also unconsciously mentioned the Yi clan. Since they're threatening, why not everyone do it together? Who's afraid of who? Yi Qinglu, this is between us and Lu Muyen. What do you mean by sticking a leg into this business? 5. Xian Xian had never only hated Xue Ling, that one woman, but also Yi Qinglu, who had never had a good attitude towards her. Now she added another Lu Muyen. Yi Qinglu put her hands on her little pretty waist, raised an eyebrow and said, Elder Sister Muyen's business will be my business from now on. If you dare bully her one bit, I'll pay you back tenfold. After she finished speaking fiercely while glaring, she turned to Yi Qing Han to seek praise and said, Right, elder brother. Yi Qing Han thought it funny as he clenched his fist, brought it to his mouth and coughed into it. Then he nodded solemnly, Lu Muyen is our Yi clan's benefactor. Whoever touches her is equivalent to opposing our Yi clan. His words were also announcing to everyone that from now on, whoever dared touch Lu Muyen would become an enemy of the Yi clan. The moment Yi Qing Han's words that defended Lu Muyen came out, the faces of many people present changed. The elite pupils of the other 9 distinguished clans all knew Yi Qing Han's position in the Yi clan. The power of his words were basically the same as the head of the Yi clan. Within the 10 distinguished clans, the Alchemist clan, Shi clan, the Beastmaster clan, Yi clan, and the Smith clan, Mu clan, had never interfered in the disputes between the rest of the 7 distinguished clans, always keeping to themselves and remaining neutral. Regardless of whether it were their foundations or strength, or the rare professions that the sword masters of the 3 clans possessed, the other 7 clans simply dared not provoke and offend at all. This time, with Yi Qing Han's obvious defensiveness, did it mean that the Ling clan might board the big ship one that is the Yi clan through Lu Mu Yen, the string? Those in charge of the several distinguished clans had to reassess Lu Mu Yen in their hearts. Qing Han, are you really going to tear apart all pretenses with our Xian clan for this irrelevant woman? Xian Xian revealed a pained expression on her face, and her eyes were mixed with deep affection and resentment. Yi Qing Han's eyes were cold, and he spoke lightly. I have never had a deep relationship with the Xian clan, so where comes the tearing apart all pretenses? Mu Yen is my friend. If the Xian clan is harmful to her, then my Yi clan naturally wouldn't sit idly by. His words were very clear. The Yi clan and Xian clan were just simple acquaintances, and they simply couldn't compare to the relationship between him and Lu Mu Yen. In fact, everyone present could understand Yi Qing Han's approach. Since earlier, the relationship between him and Lu Mu Yen clearly didn't appear that shallow. Lu Mu Yen then also saved Yi Qing Le's life. Anyone would repay such kindness, not to mention there was a mysterious high-level alchemist behind Lu Mu Yen, so it was normal for him to come forward and defend her. Towards Ling Fei Hao and the Yi clan's siblings' protection of her, Lu Mu Yan's heart warmed. She stood up. Despite after such a fierce battle, her white clothes weren't stained with a speck of dust nor blood, and her delicate and stunning face carried an arrogance as if looking down upon the world. Her red lips parted lightly. Young Miss Xian, if you want to fight then fight, why do you speak so much nonsense? There was indeed a violent trait within her. Since she was the one that provoked Xian Xian and Xue Ling, she didn't need others to clean the grounds for her. Since she was destined to have insoluble grudges against the two, then might as well be openly arrogant. Even if she pierced through the heavens too, she would have her way of getting out. What an arrogant junior. Just when Xian Xian was irritated by Lu Mu Yen and wanted to fight, a voice like exploding thunder, with an imposing manner, sounded. Then, more than a dozen people descended from the sky, and each landed in a different place. A tall, middle-aged man with a dangerous aura appeared in front of Xian Xian. Dad. When Xian Xian saw the man, her eyes lit up and she shouted in delightful surprise. Towards the middle-aged man who suddenly appeared, many revealed surprised and respectful gazes. This man was the newly promoted sword sovereign powerhouse of the Xian clan, Xian Bojian. You're willful again. Xian Bojian appeared doting and seemed to pamper Xian Xian very much. Xian Xian was like a completely different person to her previous imperious attitude. She pursed her lips and grumbled in a sweet manner, how am I willful, I'm just being bullied by a stinky girl from some random clan. Her tone was like one of a spoilt child while directly ridiculing Lu Mu Yan's family background who were like ants in their eyes. Xian Bojian cast his gaze on Lu Mu Yan and swept over her unscrupulously. A dense pressure rolled towards her. When did the Lu clan have such an arrogant girl? My, Xian Bojian's, daughter is not someone who anyone can bully. Seeing the deliberate sword sovereign pressure Xian Bojian released at Lu Mu Yan, Yi Qing Han and the others' complexions changed. They wanted to speak up but was stopped by Lu Mu Yan with a look. She straightened her back, her eyes like torches, and the mental energy in her sea of consciousness condensed into a dense net to greet that pressure. A silver bell-like laughter poured out from her lips, and her voice carried some ridicule. I've only ever heard of the saying when one hits the small one, the old one comes 3, but who knew that we haven't even started fighting and the old ones come. And the moment a sword sovereign powerhouse arrives, the moment he shows the attitude of a bully towards a sword spirit cultivation-based junior, it truly is eye-opening. Her meaning was obvious. Before I even started fighting with your daughter, you came out and used the strength of a sword sovereign to oppress me, a sword spirit cultivation-based junior narrow-minded, small-bellied, the face of the sword sovereign powerhouses was all lost because of you. Lu Mu Yen had her own pride. So what of a sword sovereign powerhouse? She wouldn't bow her head to anyone. What's more, in this situation, she expected that it was simply impossible for Xian Bojian to really kill her in front of so many people. At most, he would use force to pressure her and teach her a lesson. Trying to make her surrender or apologize and use it to indirectly slap the Ling clan's facius if she'd allow him to do as he wanted. If one submitted and backed away today due to fear because of the gap in cultivation bases, then one would surely bring upon themselves a heart demon in the future. If one wanted to perfect their cultivation base, then it'd be difficult to progress. Gasp. After Lu Mu Yan's voice fell, many people couldn't help taking in a cold breath. Lu Mu Yan, this woman was indeed a lunatic who didn't play the cards according to reason. She was a small sword spirit. Even if she did have the strength to fight a sword king, but she dared to openly challenge a sword sovereign powerhouse, she really was bored of living. Other than that, there were also a few people who noticed that although Lu Mu Yan's forehead overflowed with a layer of fine sweat and her body swayed slightly, but the pressure of the sword sovereign actually passed over her head, as if something was blocking most of that power. Xian Bojian's originally smiling face suddenly became very grim, and with a cold snort, a vaster pressure rolled towards her and attacked her with a sliver of elemental energy. Junior, do not dare to be so wild. Lu Mu Yan's eyes grew slightly colder and her upright back remained unchanged. Her mental energy turned into numerous invisible dense nets, blocking most of the pressure and elemental energy's momentum. Although her spiritual sense was very strong and her mental energy was rarely matched by others, but because of the suppression of the laws of heaven and earth, plus the huge gap in their cultivation base, she just felt hot blood rise from her chest and a trace of blood flowed from her lips. She closed her eyes and the plain white clothes that wrapped around her petite and exquisite body billowed in the wind. She stood still, unyielding, her face still calm as usual, composed, as if a blooming snow lotus, proud and independent, and stunningly beautiful. Mo Yan, constantly be prepared to use the secret skill. Lu Mu Yan's voice sounded in Mo Yan's sea of consciousness. A rare trace of scarlet mixed with coldness appeared in his usually indifferent eyes. All right. Xian Bo Jian saw that Lu Mu Yan actually withstood the pressure that was mixed with some elemental energy of a sword sovereign without a change in expression. Although he didn't use his full strength, but if it were a normal sword spirit, they'd probably have long flown out and bled profusely. Severe injuries were inevitable. The invisible force that blocked his pressure made his heart sink. Just what sort of secret did this Lu Mu Yan possess? Could it be protection from a spirit treasure? Because Lu Mu Yan's mental energy barrier was quite special, as long as she deliberately suppressed it, there wouldn't be any large fluctuations. So people, including Xian Bo Jian, all never would have thought that it was the mental energy, released from her sea of consciousness, that withstood the pressure. One board someone's ship/boat, meaning to become allies with someone. Usually positive and used to express how lucky the person/people are, but there are negative examples. This one is positive. When Lu Mubai stretched out his hand to draw his sword, and when Yi Qing Han and the leading sword monarch powerhouse of the Ling clan was about to step up to speak, Lan Si suddenly walked in front of Lu Mu Yan. Senior Xian, Lu Mu Yan is a student of our Empire Academy and even one of the elites of the younger generation of our Yanzhou kingdom. She is relatively young and impulsive, so if there is any offense, I ask that senior excuses and forgives and not fuss over this with this junior. Then he flicked his sleeves lightly and an invisible wave dissolved the last bit of pressure that enveloped Lu Mu Yan. His handsome and elegant face still carried with it a gentleness, appearing as if a jade-like gentleman. Except the forcefulness his words carried couldn't be ignored. Lu Mu Yan shouldn't tolerate having the sword sovereign of the Xian clan teach her a lesson. Although Yanzhou kingdom wasn't as strong as the overall strength of the 10 distinguished clans, but their foundation wasn't weak at all. The sword sovereign powerhouse of the imperial family wasn't just a little bit stronger than Xian Bo Jian. As soon as Lan Si appeared, Lu Mu Yan felt the taste of blood in her chest dissipate. She was a little surprised inwardly. What did this fox want to do? Suddenly, the gentle voice of a male, like spring water, sounded in her sea of consciousness. I'll take care of this matter. Lu Mu Yan was naturally not afraid of Xian Bo Jian. Although she was only a sword spirit after she established her foundation, but her strength was actually equivalent to a peak phase sword king, and her spiritual energy was even richer and purer. She even had countless methods, plus Mo Yan's secret skill, so although yes, she couldn't beat Xian Bo Jian, but it was possible to escape from his grasp. It was just that if they really had to walk until that point, she and Mo Yan would have to pay some prices. Now that Lan Si stepped up, she wouldn't be foolish and let emotions affect her decision, so she replied with an all right. Then stood behind Lan Si and watched quietly for any changes. Lan boy, are you threatening me with Yanzhou kingdom? Xian Bo Jian's expression wasn't very good, and his voice was cold. Lan Si was neither humble nor haughty as he smiled handsomely and elegantly like the spring breeze and said, this junior does not dare, but before we came to the glacial mountain range, the emperor and imperial teacher ordered this one to take care of Lu Mu Yan, not allowing any accidents to occur to her, so this junior could only thicken my face and request senior to give some face. He didn't think that Lu Mu Yan did anything wrong. From the very beginning it was the young miss from the Xian clan that was aggressive and pressing. To think this sword sovereign powerhouse wasn't embarrassed to involve himself in the situation between the younger generation, Lan Si sure felt like he lost face for him. If Xian Bo Jian didn't give face, then he could only tear apart all pretenses. Lu Mu Yan wasn't just the granddaughter of the Ling clan's patriarch but also a trial student of Yanzhou kingdom. Plus, he also had some selfish motives, so as long as he was here, had definitely protect her. I need to give a young boy who had only recently advanced to sword monarch some face? No wonder the students of your Empire Academy are so wild. It turned out that they were all like your principal, being taught verbally and by example. Before advancing to a sword sovereign, Xian Bo Jian had a deep grudge against Yuanli, and even had a sense of hatred towards the entire Empire Academy of Yanzhou kingdom because of it. So towards Lan Si, who was also a teacher of the Empire Academy, he also disliked. And Lu Mu Yan wasn't only a student of Yuanli's academy, but also a part of the Ling clan, their enemy they want to eradicate. That's why today he would lower himself and use his daughter's words to take advantage of the situation and humiliate Lu Mu Yan. As such, he could not only slap Yuanli's face, but also let the Ling clan lose face together. Originally he thought that Lu Mu Yan, that little junior, would definitely be forced to subdue. Then Hell let her bow and apologize to his daughter in public, humiliating the Ling clan as well, but he didn't expect that this stinky girl was a person who knew no fear and was an exceptionally arrogant tough bone. The fact that Lu Mu Yan refused to lower her head and even spoke with ridicule not only let him not achieve hitting Yuanli and Ling clan's face, but actually allowed someone to say that he, a sword sovereign, oppressed the weak. This feeling of being confronted and counterslapped in the face by a junior truly made him angry. He was precisely oppressing the weak, but what can anyone do to him? The most important thing was that there was an intuition deep in his heart that he must not let go of Lu Mu Yan, this little junior, today, otherwise there'd be endless troubles in the future. Lan Si's handsome and elegant face was also dyed with a bit of anger. If it weren't that his identity couldn't be easily exposed, he definitely would have torn Xian Bo Jian's body into thousands of pieces. Then what does senior desire? In fact, we don't need to fight like this either. As long as the girl of the Lu clan kneels down to my daughter and admit her wrongs, then this matter will be over. Otherwise, don't blame me for not being courteous. Xian Bo Jian looked at Lan Si and Lu Mu Yen with belittling and despise. He really didn't put these two people at heart. An unprecedented storm was brewing in Lan Si's eyes and the slender fingers under his sleeves were prepared to pinch seals. Lu Mu Yen sneered and said in an extremely arrogant manner, "Sure enough, both father and daughter all have mythomania, the upper beam is not straight so the lower beam's crooked too. One. Make her kneel? What a huge joke. She, Lu Mu Yen, hasn't bowed down to anyone in her 2 lives. A puny Xian Bo Jian was worthy? She knew that whether she yielded or remained firm today, this sword sovereign from the Xian clan would still want to humiliate her regardless. If she really knelt and admitted her wrongs, not only could the Lu clan and Ling clan lose face, but from now on, she probably should never even bother thinking about advancing into the ranks of the strong. Wow! Hearing such arrogant words from Lu Mu Yen, countless people couldn't help but be shocked and puzzled. Was it that this lunatic didn't want her life? You're courting death. Xian Bo Jian showed unprecedented killing intent in his eyes. His right hand pinched hand seals and a column of water tore through the air and turned into a blue Jiao dragon, whizzing towards Lu Mu Yen. Lu Mu Yen raised her head and stared at the Jiao dragon formed by water elemental energy condensation. So this was strength displayed by a sword sovereign powerhouse. It was indeed condensed rather like a Jiao dragon, but it only looked like the real thing and wasn't one. Xian Bo Jian's water attribute elemental energy law was still far from being comprehended to perfection. Her gaze locked onto the roaring Jiao dragon that flew towards her as her 2 hands formed hand seals quickly in the air. Traces of fire elemental energy overflowed from her body, and she instantly became a flaming person. Roar! A fire dragon rushed out from behind her with thunderous momentum, raised its head in the air and roared. There were transparent jade runes that wound around the fire dragon, constantly circling the dragon's body, looking mysterious and unusual. The water Jiao dragon, with the elemental energy pressure of a sword sovereign powerhouse, wiped out everything in its way as lines upon lines of cracks formed, like autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves, directly attacking towards Lu Mu Yen. Lu Mu Yan's eyes remained cold, and her face was still light like the wind and clouds as her slender, jade-like hands flipped a few times. Her lips spit out a word gently, "Go." All one saw was the fire dragon whistle into the sky from behind her, as if stepping on clouds and mist. With a spin, it directly greeted the Jiao dragon. The one water one fire elemental energy condensation of the 2 people stunned everyone. But everyone could all feel that in resemblance to the real thing, Lu Mu Yan's appeared to be closer. But it was a pity that due to the difference in cultivation base, in terms of the pressure and momentum, the fire dragon was still a lot weaker than the water Jiao. Lu Mu Yen never expected her own fire dragon, made from fire elemental energy condensation, could win that water Jiao. The difference in cultivation base was too big and simply couldn't be remedied. But she added the Azure Dragon token of the 4 symbols array into the condensed fire dragon. This was her real intent. She couldn't hurt Xian Bo Jian, but even if she was severely injured, she must take this blow. This was her, Lu Mu Yan's, pride. Boom boom. The blue Jiao dragon and the scarlet fire dragon roared ferociously and bit towards each other's neck. Translated product by Mayar Come True. When the 2 clashed, the power of the blue and red instantly burst into a dazzling light. The earth trembled and shook a few times as the overflowing power of the 2 swept across the surrounding area. Everyone quickly mobilized the double-layered defense of an elemental energy shield plus a defense-type magic treasure. Crack! The surrounding trees all collapsed, creating loud cracking noises. Lu Mu Yen started fixedly at the cluster of light in midair. The fire dragon gradually disappeared and although the blue Jiao's color dimmed quite a bit, it still flew towards her with terrifying force, breaking through the red, foggy light without stopping. Most of the spiritual energy within her body was used for the fire elemental energy condensation. She could only use the remaining bit of spiritual energy to turn into a transparent circle of light to envelop herself. With a snap of her fingers, the jade runes on the fire dragon instantly rotated. A palm-sized jade-colored transparent azure dragon emerged from the disappearing fire dragon and arrived first in front of Lu Mu Yen at the speed of lightning. Boom boom. Although the jade-colored rune dragon was small, but the power that burst from within wasn't weaker than the previously condensed fire dragon. After a few loud blasts, the blue Jiao dragon and the jade-colored rune dragon both vanished into oblivion in this world. Pu. After all the light curtains dissipated, Lu Mu Yen spewed out a few mouthfuls of blood and her body was blown back by the blue Jiao dragon's remaining force. Yener. Mu Yen. Lu Mu Yen. Elder sister Mu Yen. Different voices sounded at the same time in anxiety and worry. Her feet kept sliding backwards and her waist-length black hair flew, unbridled. A few more mouthfuls of blood spurted out, then finally, she stopped at around 100 meters away. She held her chest and stabilized her figure with a stream of blood flowing out of her lips. Her face remained unchanged as she raised her head, her eyes looking at Xian Bo Jian with endless coldness and said, "Today's blow, I took it. It will be returned 100 times in the future." The current her couldn't be considered fine. Her abdomen was churning with blood and force, obviously having suffered internal injuries. If it weren't that the flesh refining method was about to break through to the second layer and her Bodhi's toughness was comparable to that of a tier 5 demonic beast, she was afraid that a few ribs would be broken today. Ever since arriving at Tianling continent, it was the first time she had been in such a sorry state. But she didn't regret her behavior. What was there to fear? She didn't lose at all in this battle. From the battle with Xian Bo Jian earlier, she understood the strength of a sword sovereign and saw through the gap between herself and a sword sovereign powerhouse. Her desire to grow even stronger was burning fervently. Although Lu Muyen was injured at this time, but her imposing manner had not diminished the slightest. Instead, she unconsciously revealed a sense of dominance, of wildness and arrogance within this world, startling everyone. This woman was definitely a lunatic. She was already vomiting blood and was injured, yet she still dared to speak so harshly against Xian Bojian. But many people also acknowledged Lu Muyan's strength in their hearts. After all, one might well ask, who dared to take on a blow from a sword sovereign powerhouse at a sword spirit cultivation base? Although she was severely injured, but she was still like a snow plum, standing proudly in the snow, its delicate fragrance brightening one's eyes. Such courage was worthy of admiration, and her elemental energy condensation, along with the jade-colored rune dragon used later, also made many completely acknowledge her strength. Lu Muyen was not simply a useless vase that only looked good. For a long time now, she was no longer the trash that was once spoken of amongst people. Her today, although didn't have the strength to fight a sword sovereign, but she had an imposing manner no weaker than a sword sovereign powerhouse. The gap in cultivation base opened an insurmountable distance, but many people thought that she hadn't lost. Just from that one confrontation now, although Lu Muyen was defeated, it was with honor. Xian Bojian obviously didn't expect that Lu Muyen would take on his water jiao made from elemental energy condensation. He didn't use all his strength just now, but he also used at least 6 or 7/10. What shocked him the most wasn't the fire dragon condensed from elemental energy, but the jade-colored rune dragon that emerged from the fire dragon. That rune dragon actually gave him a faint sense of danger. If Lu Muyan's cultivation base was comparable to his, or was at middle phase sword monarch cultivation base, in a battle like just now, he was afraid that he would inevitably be injured. This woman must not remain alive. This was the firm thought that rose in Xian Bojian's mind. Presumptuous, go die. Xian Bojian also disregarded the dignity of the strong. Provoked by Lu Muyan's words, a huge, dark blue sword appeared in his hand. He channeled 8 or 9/10 of elemental energy into it, then he swung hard. An even more violent and raging sword aura erupted, which was even stronger than the Jiao dragon made from water elemental energy condensation. The violent gust of wind, combined with a sword aura, headed directly towards Lu Muyan's forehead. Mo Yen. Lu Muyen rubbed the blood on her lips and looked at Xian Bojian raising his sword with coldness and indifference in her eyes. Mo Yan's eyes grew cold, and the pressure of a king-class demonic beast gradually spread out. When he was just about to use his innate talent to fight together with Lu Muyen, suddenly a sword aura that was not weaker than Xian Bojian's came from the side. Hoo. 2 sword auras clashed instantly, but unexpectedly, it didn't explode with any energy fluctuation. The sword aura that came from the side seemed to carry a power that contained the heaven and earth, instantly merging with Xian Bojian's sword aura, and then squeezed out from a small crack in space. Neither of the 2 sword auras affected the people present. Then the space rift that had been forcibly torn open quickly closed and a voice came from Yiqing Han's direction. Xian Bojian, that is enough, don't lose the face of a sword sovereign powerhouse. At this moment, a handsome and beautiful silver-haired man suddenly appeared beside Yiqing Han with a very gentle and soft smile on his face, as if he could pardon everything. Seeing that the crisis was temporarily resolved, Mo Yen immediately dissipated the king-class pressure that was about to take form, taking the chance when people weren't paying attention. The demonic energy that was churning inside his body returned to calmness. The hand seal that Lan Si was pinching within his sleeves also instantly came to a stop. He calmed down and retracted the power in his dantian that was about to open a layer of his seal. Yi Zhan. Xian Bojian looked at the person that arrived and his pupils constricted. Hearing Xian Bojian's voice, the eyes of all the people present turned to the silver-haired man in black clothes who just appeared. Yi Zhan, the youngest sword sovereign in the Yi clan and even among the 10 distinguished clans. At only 26, he had stepped into the ranks of a sword sovereign powerhouse and became the peerless genius of the 10 distinguished clans that was hard to find even in 100 years. His talent and strength, compared to the strongest talented elites of the other 3 regions on this continent, was only superior and not inferior. He was also the idol in the hearts of countless elite pupils of the 10 distinguished clans. Yi Zhan, are you going to intervene now? Xian Bojian's expression was fearfully grim. He didn't expect that Yiqing Han and Yiqing Lu was actually able to invite Yi Zhan to help Lu Muyen. This man who was always wearing a tolerant and soft smile made Xian Bojian dislike him extremely. Although Yi Zhan, who had just passed 30, hadn't yet broken through sword sovereign to the next step, but even he couldn't see through the strength of this person. What made him most afraid was that Yi Zhan also had a tier 7 spirit pet at the transformation stage. If he went against Yi Zhan today, he definitely wouldn't be his opponent. The Lu clan's little girl saved my clan's Qinglu before, so you tell me whether I should make a move or not. Yi Zhan wore a smile on his face and his voice was as clear as spring water, but it made people feel a chill for no reason. Little paternal uncle, why are you so slow? Yiqing Lu was pleased to see Yi Zhan's face and complained with a tone as if acting spoiled. Elder brother sent out a distress signal for ages already and you just arrived. Humph, otherwise elder sister Mu Yen wouldn't be hurt by that old thing. You girl, I came as soon as I received the signal. There was a hint of helplessness in Yi Zhan's eyes as he looked at the Yi clan siblings softly and lovingly. Translated. The appearance of Yi Zhan also made Lu Mu Bai and the others, as well as the sword monarchs of the Ling clan, feel relieved. Yi Zhan, are you really going to meddle in other people's business today? Xian Bojian's eyes were full of dark haziness. He originally wanted to kill Lu Muyen here today, so even if he returned from the glacial mountain range, it would be too late for the Ling clan and Lu clan to even complain. Except he completely didn't expect that Lu Muyen would save Yiqing Lu earlier, and there was also an unclear relationship between her and Yiqing Han. Now that Yi Zhan appeared, it seemed that he wouldn't be able to kill her anymore. Yi Zhan nodded lightly, naturally. As a sword sovereign expert, why fuss with a little girl at sword spirit strength? This time, how about for the face of our Yi clan, you let it be. It wasn't that it was impossible for Yi Zhan to insist and exert pressure on Xi and Bo Jian to resolve this if he wanted to, but the birth of the Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal was imminent, and time didn't allow them to cause trouble again. Now he gave Xi and Bo Jian a step to back down, but if this person still insisted on acting against Lu Mu Yen, then he could only use force to resolve it. The look in Xi and Bo Jian's eyes were cloudy and uncertain, very cryptic. Then finally, he swept his gaze over Lu Mu Yen coldly and said, "All right. This time, he'll spare her life for the sake of the Yi clan's face. If there's another instance of this, I will definitely not hold back. As such, I thank Fourth Master Xian." Yi Zhan's tone was light, and he automatically ignored Xi and Bo Jian's threatening words. With his temperament, if it were under normal circumstances, he wouldn't even talk nonsense with Xi and Bo Jian. Xi and Bo Jian was the most hopeless sword sovereign among the 10 distinguished clans. In the future, his cultivation base would probably stop at sword sovereign, but he felt that on Lu Mu Yen, there was a flourishing aura like the rising sun from the east in its early bloom, full of preserved energy ready for the future. After watching the battle just now, he came to a conclusion. How is this woman a fish in a pond? Upon greeting a storm, a dragon she will become one. Lu Mu Yen lowered her eyes and concealed all the killing intent in them. The Xian clan was truly pushing people too hard. She would definitely make the Xian clan pay a heavy price in the future. Dad! Xian Xian couldn't help but yell out. Today was the perfect opportunity to get rid of Lu Mu Yen. Xi and Bo Jian also had anger that was unable to be dispersed. But the current situation didn't allow him to directly confront Yi Zhan. Putting aside Yi Zhan's own extraordinary abilities, it wouldn't be worth offending the Yi clan just to kill a junior. Shut up. Let's go. Xi and Bo Jian glanced at Xian Xian coldly, preventing her from continuing to speak. Then he waved his hand and turned around, leaving the woods with the Xian clan. "I'll definitely have you die next time." Xian Xian stomped her foot. Before she left, she had turned around and looked at Lu Mu Yen viciously, then left unwillingly after leaving the harsh words. Lu Mu Yen sneered inwardly. "Next meeting, I'll definitely have you die too." She took out a bottle of pills for healing from her interspatial ring and poured it into her mouth. A coolness instantly spread all over her body, suppressing that painful heat in her chest quite a bit, and the churning state of her abdomen also stopped. She raised her head and looked at Yi Zhan, saying, "Thank you greatly, senior, for helping me." She had her ways to escape without Yi Zhan, but she naturally owed a personal favor to this person since he acted. A faint smile rose on Yi Zhan's lips, and his voice was as sweet and cold as spring water. No need. Towards this woman with extraordinary combat power, he still somewhat appreciated, and he knew that she must still have some trump cards unused, otherwise it was impossible for her to face that sword aura that was enough to kill her without any change in expression, remaining calm and composed. "You all recover for a day and then hurry along. The Heavenly Frost Golden Crystal would be born in 2 days. Well, take our leave first." Yi Zhan turned to look at Yi Qinghan and said. "All right." Yi Qinghan nodded, revealing slight fondness on his face. Immediately, Yi Zhan walked towards the end of the forest. His black robe paired with the head of silver made his tall figure appear otherworldly, and the moment one didn't pay attention, his figure was completely hidden in this world. "Yenner, are you all right?" Lu Mu Bai stepped forward and looked at Lu Mu Yen with worry. When Xi and Bo Jian acted, he simply had no time to rescue her and could only look on helplessly as the sword aura cut towards his sister's forehead. The pain and forlorn desolation in his heart made Lu Mu Bai realize that he was still too insignificant. He squeezed his fists. He had never had a greater desire to grow stronger. Only when he grew stronger and stronger, until he placed himself above this entire continent, could he protect his family. Lu Mu Yen raised her head and smiled at Lu Mu Bai charmingly. "Elder brother, don't worry, I'm fine." Yunlan and the others also came over, each with incomprehensible emotions in their eyes. The battle between Lu Mu Yen and the Sword Sovereign shocked them and also aroused their desire for strength. Yi Qinglu walked beside Lu Mu Yen and held her wrist affectionately, her eyes filled with admiration. "Elder sister Mu Yen, you're so amazing. In the future my little paternal uncle will no longer be my person of worship, you're the goal I want to chase after." Looking at Yi Qinglu's adorable, innocent smile, Lu Mu Yan's heart warmed. She stretched out. She felt very fated with Yi Qinglu and treated her like a younger sister in her heart. "Qinglu, stop pestering Mu Yen, let her recover as soon as possible." Lu Mu Yan's eyes were filled with streams of light. "Qinghan, my deepest gratitude." Qinghan's repeated defense for her tonight made her moved. "Why is there a need for verbal gratitude between us?" Yi Qinghan shook his head with a smile. In his heart, he didn't want Lu Mu Yen to settle everything too clearly with himself. That gorgeous figure had already inhabited his heart. "Then I won't be polite from now on." Lu Mu Yan's eyes were dyed with some cheeriness. In front of a friend that she acknowledged, she indeed didn't need to be polite in the future. Today's fight must have made everyone tired. You all quickly restore your elemental energy and physical strength. There's still a tough battle to be fought later. Lu Mu Yen saw the concerned and caring gazes surrounding her and suddenly felt a belonging towards this world. Other people's elemental energy and physical strength were indeed heavily depleted, so they each found a vacant seat near her and sat down to recover. Lu Mu Yen walked beside a large tree and sat down, poured out a few pills again and took it. As soon as she raised her head, she met Lan Sis' gaze not far away. "Teacher Lan, the favor of you protecting me today will be repaid in the future." Lu Mu Yen moved her mouth silently. Lan Sis' gentle and elegant face was full of interest. This woman could surprise him every time. He opened his mouth and mouthed a few words. "I await your repayment." With amusement, Lu Mu Yen looked at Fox Lan, who used his gentleness, handsomeness, and elegance to hide his true nature. This man definitely wasn't as simple as he appeared on the surface. Before Yishan acted, she felt a fluctuation of an array seal from Lan Si. She was certain that this man had hidden his strength. All right. Lu Muyen said softly, then closed her eyes and began to recuperate. She must adjust her physical condition to its peak state within a day. She's going to take that heavenly frost golden crystal for sure. There was a strong sense of crisis in her heart. She felt that various accidents would occur in the coming battle for the heavenly frost golden crystal. The Xian clan's father and daughter might even secretly act against her. She reached out and rubbed the faintly gleaming ice bangle on her wrist. There was actually a little more connection between her and it because of that battle just now. Ming Xiu, we're about to meet again soon. Translated product by